And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news, and this is From the Cheap Seats, where we sit down and talk athletics here in Livingston Parish. I'm going to let this gentleman introduce himself real quick. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right. This is Rob DeArmond. I'm the sports editor with the Livingston Parish News.
So we are playing catch up. Had a scheduling issue last week, so we are going to be. We have no previews from last week's games because obviously they have occurred. So we're going to talk about last week's games for football, and then lead into this week's games, and then we'll have a probably not a terribly long discussion, but we're going to talk about the ever shifting postseason format. We've got something new and fun, and perhaps it'll change, and perhaps it won't. We'll see. So first and foremost, let's go team by team. We're gonna start up in the north this time. We started in the southeast and went up to Watson. We're gonna start in Watson and go down to the southeast this time. So who did Live Oak play last week, and what's coming up this week?
Live Oak had Bonneville last week. That was a Thursday game. They won 41-7. You kind of see that offense the week before they kind of struggled a little bit against Dunham. You kind of see that offense you can see what they're capable of if they're clicking on all cylinders. Blake Rosenthal had 3 rushing touchdowns, and Sawyer Pruitt really found a groove with his receivers there. They will be traveling to play St. Helena this week, which Coach Westmoreland said for some of the guys, that's really the first road trip that they've taken since their playoff game last year. So it's going to be, he said, we don't go very far, maybe 30 minutes, but it's still a road trip nonetheless, and that's something you kind of got to build into the schedule and get them used to doing that. So I think that's the biggest challenge for them is kind of keeping that momentum going and doing a road trip at the same time.
Yeah, and not quite as short as, say, a road trip to Central or Denham or Walker, but not that far either.
Right.
And
right.
especially as the district has expanded into Ascension Parish, that's definitely farther from
Yeah,
Watson
for
to
sure.
St. Helena.
For sure.
So moving down the road, let's do Denham next.
Denham Springs gets a 31-0 win over Liberty. Ran the ball really well, and talked to Coach Beard about Reese Mooney's play. He said he kind of looked like the Reese Mooney of old. He got started early, which is a big key for him. And going forward, they're kind of hoping that'll continue. But he said, I like what we're doing right now, but by no means at 3-0 can we be satisfied with where we're at. And they will be facing Franklinton on Thursday. That's a game that was moved, I believe, due to official shortage. So they'll be traveling up to Franklinton. That's a place that Coach Beard coached at, got some ties there, and he said they've got some athletes, so it should be a good test for them. They're going on the road as well.
Lots of travel this week.
Yes.
So heading way east from there, heading east from there into Walker. How'd they look last week, and who they got coming up?
Played Mandeville last week. They won 35-32. Ran a little trick play late in the game, and then were able to get the win there. It's one of those things where you talk with Coach Mahaffey as well. It's again the maintain the momentum, but at the same time you're going on the road. They had to play that game last week at Fountainblue High School due to some turf issues there at Mandeville. But like you said, it follows the same principle. They're playing another good team in Kentwood, going to Kentwood. And for Coach Mahaffey, he said it's the first time he's ever been. It's going to be his first trip to, as they call it, playing under the tank. Because if you've ever been there to Kentwood, the football field is literally there, and there's a water tank right behind the football field. So they call it playing under the tank. It was kind of funny. He said some of our kids don't know about that, and I was at the end of practice on Monday, and the kids are coming through, and they, one of them said, "Hey, we're going to play the Kangaroos," and the other one looked. He said, "Is that really their nickname?" And I said, "Yeah, man, that's really their nickname." But that should be a really good test for Walker. Not only in the opponent, but also being able to go on the road and see if you can sustain some success there.
Sure, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes because I will remember. I believe Coach Beard was still at Live Oak, but they went over to Kentwood, and it came down to the wire because they got athletes. They'll
Yeah.
fight. They'll fight
Yeah.
you till the very end. And it's a
And
very
actually, that was the last game I covered at Kentwood was Live Oak and Kentwood a few I think it was Coach Beer's last year there at Live Oak. But always a good game. That one was back and forth. It was a really good game, and I have no reason to kind of expect the same type of thing there.
okay. So heading to Albany, how are things going for them, and who have they got coming up?
Last week it was the Battle of I-12, Springfield and Albany. Springfield wins 52-49. When I say punch, counter punch, that's literally what it was. Albany scores, takes the opening kickoff down, scores on the first play from scrimmage. Springfield comes right back and gets a long touchdown there, and that's kind of how it was all night. Kind of the difference in a little bit of stuff was Springfield at one point was 4 for 4 on 2-point conversions, and you see how close the game is. If I remember correctly, Albany had a PAT block, but it's like I told the coaches, when you have that much scoring and it kind of goes on, everything just kind of bleeds together. But it was one of those games where, Coach Ligori afterwards just kind of said we need to kind of get a little bit more physical, a little bit more tough, and he said we may see some personnel and maybe some schematic changes for them to try to combat some stuff this week. And they'll be hosting they've got Fisher. That's a homecoming game for them, and he's expecting to see a healthy dose of the run game from Fisher, which is some of what they saw against Springfield. So he said we got to be ready for that.
Got to play tough against those physical downhill teams, and an early homecoming. So that kind of leads me to believe there's a heavy district slate, a lot of road games coming up for them.
We've got there's a shorter district. I think it's a 14 district as
Right.
well when they get on that side of it. But yeah, it's coming. Actually, Springfield has their homecoming this week as well. So.
Well, let's talk about them. Obviously, they were the ones who came out victorious in the Battle of I-12. So, what did Coach have to say about that? And then, who do they have coming up for their homecoming?
They will be hosting Slaughter Charter on Friday. Just in talking to Coach Surpass, if you guys were there at the game, Jatoris Buggage he's just on a tear. Picked up right where he left off from last season. Ran for almost 300 yards there, and that's just he gave credit to that's just his running style and the work that they did up front on the offensive line. And Slaughter Charter is he said they're a really good team, and they're expecting another good test there. So just be ready for it. Obviously they want to try to move to 4-0, but they know it's not going to be easy.
Sure. But plenty of there's always plenty of roadblocks. And going back to what Coach Beard said, 3-0, still not really, can't sit there. Got to continue to advance.
You like where you are record wise, but things are going to get tough as you keep going down the road, especially when you get to district.
Sure, and that's the exact reason that Coach Beard and Coach Mahaffey said that they jamboree against each other. They expect to be completely different by the time they face each other, usually in October.
It's the great quote that Coach Beard used. I think he uses it just about every year. He said, if we can't make adjustments from a jamboree to week 10, then we're not very good coaches. So that one sticks in my head a lot.
Right. So there's your rundown of last week's scores as well as what's coming up for all 5 parish football teams. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit here. This is more of an overarching subject. But as you mentioned, as you were sitting there preparing to cover the Battle of I-12 this past Friday, you were informed that a new format has been agreed upon by the LHSAA for postseason play. A lot of back and forth here, a lot of questions, a lot of comments. Give us an overview of what that new format's going to look like.
So we'll go back here, not this past Friday, but the Friday before the Athletic Association released its revised. You kind of knew this was coming, but they released some revised playoff pairings, if you will, and it went on a 4-division format. The 5A schools in the parish are in Division 1, but that's where things started to change a little bit. In football, Albany is in Division 2, which puts them, Albany's a 3A school. It kind of puts them in in the realm with some 4A schools, which is a little bit different. These classifications are based on enrollment, and so that's kind of how they get to the point. Division III in football would put Springfield in there. And you're kind of looking at that one. The biggest thing I think when I talked to Coach Surpass at Springfield was you look at the way they're broken down, and using Albany as an example, they're sitting in Division II, but all of the teams they're playing in their district are, Division III teams in there with Springfield, which changes the landscape for both of those teams. And so, when I talked to Coach Surpass was probably the most, vocal about it. He said, what's the point of us playing a district schedule now? We should just go tear up the contracts and just, start scheduling independently. And the other part is that at the point this comes out, they're going into week 3 of the season. So and they've cut down the number of playoff teams. So you kind of maybe prepare and say, this is what, you tell your team or your kids, this is what we need to do to get in the playoffs. And then this happens and it kind of changes the landscape of what you want to do. When those pairings also came out, or those divisions also came out, you're looking at, if I remember correctly, in Division III, we would have had, this would have been for basketball and softball. It would have been Doyle, Holden, French Settlement, and Springfield. So if you're looking at it and you pay attention to the way it works, you might could have had maybe, and I'm going by teams that have made it to the state tournament. But I'm specifically in softball is what I was paying attention to. Doyle's there, they've been there, and of course Holden's a 5-time state championship team or program. So you could conceivably maybe in the playoffs have maybe a Doyle playing a Holden for a state championship, which kind of changes some things up there. So what happened last Friday was the Athletic Association again had a Zoom meeting specifically regarding mainly those B through C school, A, B, and C schools, I should say, to kind of address some of the concerns that they had. So what they wound up doing was kind of redrawing the format again, and so now you have 5 divisions. And what it wound up doing was it wound up putting Holden back into Division 5 along with Marpaw, which when I talked to Coach Dubois, the basketball coach at Holden, boys basketball coach, he said what it kind of does is puts them back on that Class B footing, if you will. So what you're looking at, and they were looking at it when that first plan came out. They take a couple of trips to place in some Class B tournaments for basketball, and he said it kind of sets them up for later on. They make connections and they can kind of see some other teams in Class B that they may see down the road. So when that first draft, I guess, comes out, they kind of look at it and said, do we really need to take that trip if we're going to be in a different division, playing against some teams that we don't normally play against? Because, it helps us, but then again, if we look at it and we don't need to take it, should we really take it? But when they go back into this class, Division 5, if you will, it kind of stays the same for them. I thought one of the interesting things, I talked to Marpaw baseball coach Anthony Gregoire, and he said with Marpaw, he said not so much worried about where they are. He said wherever they put us, we'll compete. But the teams, the programs he worries about are those Class C schools that maybe only have a shot at a state championship in, say, a cross country or a track. And when you put those schools together like that, because you've got a mixture of B and C schools in that Division 5. So he said it kind of changes the dynamic for what they're going to do. And it may take away that opportunity to compete for a state championship in those sports that they, those smaller schools might have a chance at winning a state championship in. So, but like he said, he said it also brings up some questions, that how do the PowerPoint stay the same? There's a formula that they use on that. And he said in scheduling, a lot of times it's beneficial to both, the smaller schools, especially like in baseball, to maybe schedule a 5A school. And it's beneficial for the 5A school to schedule that Class B school. the PowerPoints stay the same or do they change? And he said there's a lot of questions that they still have, and hopefully they can get them answered as this thing progresses, because it may be one of those things where as they happen, it's going to be a situational type deal. But it bears watching, because it'll come up in January at the next meeting. So we'll see if things will stay as they are or get changed up again.
Well, anybody who's listening to this or watching, is probably cross-eyed at this point, because I mean that's just that's a major change. There's a lot of information there. I'm sure a lot of parents and coaches have a lot of questions. You just received all this information. Some of those questions may not even really be answered yet. So be on the lookout for more updates. But as you said, I mean, this kind of slapped everybody in the face, because here it is, week 3, and that, I mean, literally playing football games on Friday night, and this came out 5 hours before that.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting to just sort of inject it right there in the middle of the season. So Rob will be staying on top of that. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate you taking the time this morning. If you'll reintroduce yourself as we head out of here.
Hey, this is Rob DeArmond, sports editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the News. This is From the Cheap Seats, where we talk about what's going on in athletics in Livingston Parish. Please remember, we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube once a week, in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. One last time, we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.